Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone again for joining. My name is Bren. I use they, them pronouns, and I am part of the SGP co-leadership. Happy to open things up here today, share more about SGP and Kindle, and then launch the conversation with our panel around DEI and the backlash that we are experiencing. I'm also happy to say happy Pride. It is the last day of June. So happy late Pride to everyone. Okay, Barthy, if you can go to the next slide. We do have some agreements. Yes, thank you, Kendra. Just for community safety. So please respect everyone's privacy, confidentiality. Like I said, we are recording, but we will do edits if we need to before we sort of release everything online. Respect one another, engage with curiosity, share space conscientiously, including really recognizing your own power dynamics. Foster a safe and inclusive learning environment. We are here to learn. We are here to support one another and really learn what we can do to make this world a more inclusive place. And then if we see any inappropriate behavior or disrespectful behavior, then our moderators may ask or encourage you to leave. So those are our agreements. And then next slide, please. So SGP, Society of Gender Professionals, we are a global membership organization. We have folks from all over the world, which I'll show you more in a second. And our goal is to be a leading global membership-based association of gender practitioners, academic and activists. We promote feminist action, research, expertise, not just for professionals in the gender world, but folks who really are here to increase gender equity across the world. So this is our mission on the screen. I won't read all of them, but we are here. Many of us are queer, and we invite you to join us. Next slide, please. We have members just updated a few days ago. Thank you, Barthy, who, since we launched our membership in 2019, have represented 91 countries. If you see your country here and it's not green, then you can represent your country by signing up as a member. Next slide, please, Barthy. And this is a little bit more about membership. So we have elected positions, we have professional development funds, we have networking events for members. And so really trying to create this, this community of gender folks around the world. So our dues are very flexible. We also have a membership dues fund for folks who are facing financial hardship. Next slide. And Connie, are you here? And if so, would you like to introduce the Kindle Project, who are our co-hosts? I'm scanning the names. Okay, Connie might not be here yet. So I will introduce Kindle then. This stands for Co-Create Inclusive Intersectional Democratic Spaces across Europe. It is a long name, so we call it Kindle or CCINDLE, some of us. And so this is a project launched from organizations collaborating with activists, institutions, gender professionals, really to focus on anti-gender and anti-democratic forces and how feminist theory and practice and feminist movements can really fight back against these. And so, oh, I didn't put the website here. I put it later on, but it's kindle.org if you want to learn more. This is our fourth collaboration with them. So we've had some really good conversations, which are on our website. Next slide. So today, introduction, that's now. We're going to share a bit about the Gender Cafe goals, and then I will turn it over to our moderator to host the panel. We'll have a short Q&A, but we do want to make sure we have time for the breakout room conversations, which I will share a little more, or Sophie will share more about a little later. Then we'll come back, debrief, and close out. So that will be around 90 minutes. And next slide. All right, so our speakers who are going to more thoroughly introduce themselves when they start speaking are Jays Lungi, V, Sumaya, and then our moderator, Sophie. And so really appreciate their time in preparing for and sharing their thoughts today. Really impressive range of of experiences here, different sectors, different backgrounds. And then with that, I will turn it over to Sophie, who can introduce herself and kick off the panel.
Thank you so much, Bren, and thanks everybody for showing up here. I could see people from all over the world, which is amazing, and that's what we always want to see. So, my name is Sophie Musler. My pronouns are she, her. I have been in the space of inclusion for almost 20 years now, on and off. It was my gay job initially, and then it became my day job around 5 years ago. I currently work in corporate. Don't kill me. So it pays the bills. But for me, the experience of working in inclusion has been a life experience as much as it has been something that I'm very professionally passionate about and I'm really interested in. And I think anyone who survives this in this day and age is someone who has earned their stripes working in this field and surviving in this field, especially given the subject that we're talking about today, the backlash globally against DEI. So with that said, I'll be moderating this session today. If I am talking a little bit too fast, please just put it in the chat. I do have a habit of talking just a little bit too fast sometimes. And I'm based in Ireland for anyone who's noticing a bit of an accent there. That's where that's coming from. So with that said, I will hand over to one of our speakers and hopefully she can hand over to the next one. So the first one is on my screen is Sumaya. So Sumaya, over to you.
Oh, and Sophie, could you, I put the questions in the chat, but since we don't have the screen up, if you can read out the questions just so that we can see all your beautiful faces.
Do you want me just to read them from the chat?
Yeah, the first one that Sumaya is going to answer just to ground us.
No, I'm just getting everyone to introduce themselves first, and then I'll read the questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sumaya Rashidi. I'm based in Algiers, in Algeria, North Africa. And I'm super, super excited to be here. I'm the founder of Next Evolution. Next Evolution is a consultancy, independent consultancy, and we work on governance, ecosystem building, decolonial frameworks, and we support organizations in transitioning from power over to power with, using different tools. And we have done lots of specific DEI work in the past few years, and the work has changed massively since 2023 on our end. And that's why I'm here, and I can't wait to share. Thank you, Sophie. And I will hand it to Lungil.
Great. Thank you so much, Sumaya. Greetings to everyone. My name is Lungile Ntombela, and I go by the pronouns she and her. I am a Black woman located in South Africa. I'm also an academic, an HR scholar within the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. I have about 10 years of experience in higher education. I've worked also in governance as well within higher education in South Africa. And I also have about 3 years in corporate. And I guess that's also why I am very interested in the corporate experiences of employees. So I think that's where I get my passion from, a little bit of my experience in corporate. So my research sits at the intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I also speak a little bit about belonging as well as organizational culture. And then I then sort of went into my PhD journey where I looked at the workplace experiences of people who self-identify as queer. And there were amazing sort of findings from the study. And if you get time, I think it would be great for you to have a look at that study. And then I think I've expanded a little bit more now to look at women in the workplace, but also just a little bit about sort of focusing on belonging, which I think is important to me. So I'm very excited to be here and I'm excited to contribute to the conversation. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to V.
Thank you, Lungi.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you kept it in South Africa. Unlike, I think it's Sumaya, who is in the top of Africa. We're at the bottom. Myself and Lungile are at the bottom of Africa, if you don't know where that is. So my name is Buchiro Masibikere. You can call me V. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a DEI strategist. And I told this team while we were rehearsing, and I said, you know what, I think I've been doing DEI work since I was born. I didn't even have the name for it, but I just knew that I wanted to fight. I wanted to fight for my space. I wanted to fight for women all over the world because of my background and how I was born and how I ended up with my dad being the third of 7 children, and the first 3 were girls, and my father wanted a boy, and then he married the second wife, and that was cool. And I think the story ended well. So don't feel bad if I tell that story, because it is a great story, and I enjoy telling it because it made me have a purpose in life. So what I do as a DEI strategist, I fight for the rights of women. I fight for the marginalized, for those who don't have a voice, and I try by all means to amplify the voices of other women, because I know, especially if you are in South Africa, I think only Sophie will understand, we've got 4 layers because of apartheid. So we've got white and Indian and colored, which is mixed race, and then we've got Africans. So as Africans, we're at the bottom. So we have got less resources, we've got less privileges, we've got less of everything. So we have to fight. So that's what I do. So I try to really, really, really fight for the rights of others. And my being a DEI strategist, for me, it really gives me so much pleasure. So I'm in the human resources space, but I've found myself just doing DEI work. And it's only now when I'm old that I realized that it was because of my childhood stories. I didn't even realize. I just knew that I was fighting, and I was fighting for space, and I was fighting for a voice. But now I understand, and I enjoy doing the work. So from my side, I think that's it. And then I'm happy to be here. I'm excited, and I hope I can share with you my experiences from the southern tip of Africa. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you, V. And I think that leaves you, Jays, as our last speaker to introduce herself. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. And hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. This topic is really incredibly close to my heart, both personally and professionally. My name is Jace Robles, and my pronouns are she and hers. I'm a neurodivergent, bisexual Filipina living in Thailand in the last 4 years. My background is rooted heavily in HR and HR services, including a 15-year journey in IBM. That's actually where my passion for this space really sparked. I started out simply leading our Pride network, eventually other employee networks, and a decade later, it became my actual day job when I stepped into the role of Asia Pacific Marketplace Diversity Leader, where I got to work directly with clients, suppliers, and partners in advancing inclusion efforts for their offices in Asia. So after my chapter in IBM, I wanted to get even closer to the ground and work directly with communities. So I joined Community Business, where we focused on bringing together the Community Business Network, a prominent network of DNI leaders across Asia, where we navigated honestly what has been a really challenging couple of years for this work. So this brings me to what I do today. I operate as a principal advisor for several multinational and nonprofit organizations. I get to spend time doing what I love, empowering employee networks with radius networks, and building the economic case of LGBTQ plus inclusion with Open for Business, just to name a few. So when I talk about our topic today, I'm looking at it through the lens of someone who has seen this work inside and out in the workplace in Asia, from grassroots employee networks to the regional corporate strategy. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Jace. And as you can see, for everyone in the audience, we've tried to have as wide of a spread of sectors and regions as we can, but we did have 2 South Africans, so we've a bit of a bias there as well in our answers. I'll begin the discussion with our first question. So we have just a handful of questions that we want to ask the panelists to go through with us before we move to Q&A. So feel free, if you have any questions while we're talking, to put them in the chat. I'll make sure I keep my eye on them. But otherwise, we will have a short period of time after the panel and before the breakouts for any questions where if you want to go off mute and ask them to the speakers. So our first question is around the political forces behind the global DEI backlash. We all know that over the last 18 months, there has been a significant backlash against DEI. We have noticed it in our news. We have noticed it in our workplaces and in the narrative that is facing us on social media, amongst other things. So Sumaya, I'll ask you first, if you could please give us an answer from your side. What are some of the ideological, economic, and institutional drivers of resistance to DEI initiatives across your region and in your sector that you have noticed in the last 18 months or so?
Thank you, Sophie. I love this question because a lot of the framing we've been hearing and the articles and the content we've been reading around DEI, especially in my world, was actually US content or a little bit of European content. But I think, so in the approach we use at Next Evolution in assessing governance and so on, we use immersion strategy. And it's a theory that was it was written by Adrienne Marie Brown. And what I love about immersion strategy is we use fractals. So the dynamics that are playing out on a micro level as actually are reflected on a macro level. Mm-hmm. So for me, this DEI backlash, and whether it's the rise of the far right in the West or anything, actually, the threats around the UN and for like international institutions, or this backlash is happening on so many terrains, and it's a reflection. In my studies, when I'm observing, it's a reflection of the collapse of colonial empires. It's broader than attacks on brown and black people in the West only. It's a broader framework, and it's a direct response of a reclamation of power being done and embodied by the global majority people in those spaces, reclaiming more space, more equity, more circulation of capital, land back, reparations, and not negotiating with that anymore. And this backlash is actually a very organized response to progress that was done. And for me, this is the most important thing, is to understand that there is a very deliberate attack on rights, on progress in general, and on the voices of these global majority people all over the globe, of indigenous rights and reclamation of indigenous rights all over the globe. And it is very organized, very well-resourced to maintain the status quo and to extract even more land and even more resources, and to meddle even more and interfere with actually the fate of the people deciding on what's next for them as people collectively. And what I've been witnessing, especially since the 7th of October 2023, and how the Palestinian cause all over the globe actually gathered and catalyzed this movement, for me, it's a reflection of that, how people came together around that, even though there is more work to be done also on the narratives around Sudan and Congo that are lacking, and also is a reflection actually of these empires and white supremacy in these movements specifically. I think the Palestinian cause is actually just a catalyst of all of that. It shows all the dynamics between censorship, between appropriation of narratives, and it is so, like, the light we've put on that and how people are coming together around that narrative is very, I feel, powerful. So this global movement the reaction or the backlash is an attack on multilateralism, on commercial level, political level, on narratives. It's an attack on resources, and it's an attack on people and activists. So I really want to emphasize that beyond the DEI in the workplace, what we are talking about is the change of power dynamics on a global level that is already happening. And it is also reflected in how wealth is circulating. And it is it's already happening. Like, we are actually moving through the largest wealth transfer in history. And that wealth is moving from white boomers to more women ownership of land, more just people from the global south reclaiming that wealth, exercising that wealth. And even if there is still power dynamics on a class level and we haven't addressed the inequalities, money and wealth is still circulating, and the circulation of capital and of wealth, actually, when we follow the money, we see where power is, we see who is deciding what, we see who is shaping the narrative, we see who is deciding. So the attack is actually to continue the grab of that, building narrative, concentration of power and wealth around media, concentration of power and wealth and around in institutional organizations. And in my work, we've been witnessing this, like the power over structures falling apart, especially in purpose-driven organizations. And I'm thinking especially in NGOs, who are, lots of them have been losing lots of funding in the past 2 to 3 years. We're witnessing, and with the tension around budget, we're seeing all the inequalities happening in those organizations. So we have very forward-thinking organizations collapsing under our eyes because we do not know how to function in a forward-thinking way. So we talk about progress, we do not embody it, we don't know how to exercise it together, and we are witnessing on a micro level how this power over is happening over our bodies and over each other, even when we know and we see what's happening. So there is a full, for me, repatterning. That is a direct result of a big reclamation that cannot be stopped now. So it's both hopeful, but the tension is real, and the backlash, there is, for me, it's warfare. There is warfare happening against activists, against people reclaiming, like they're reclaiming this new movement. And I think it's a very interesting time, but also very violent. So this is how I would just very quickly talk about that. And also the demographics of today are reflecting the emergence. Like, just because in 20 years, 1 in 4 people is going to be African, this is a change in power dynamics as well. So yeah, I'm gonna stop here. I think
Thank you, Sumaya. It's good that you stopped, because I was so fascinated by everything that you've said. And absolutely, I think what we're witnessing is decades of oppression coming to a head and coming to a moment where that backlash just reflects the power of the movement that has created it. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to what else you can add into the conversation as we go forward. With what you've said, the second question comes in, I think, at a good point, and it ties in very well with that. So, Jays, I'll ask you to answer the second question, if that's okay. How are DEI knowledge and practitioners being challenged, especially with the view of everything that Sumaya has just shared? What are you seeing, and what approaches are you using or that you are witnessing in order for us to defend and advance the field?
Yeah, so Maya really raised a very good point that this actually fight for retaining power and wealth. But yeah, that was just a good point. But to start to frame the backlash in the context of Asia, it's really very different here. Unlike in the West, where the resistance is really loud, here it's quiet, it's structural, and it hides behind compliance and especially saving face. So this backlash is attempting to delegitimize DEI by focusing on concepts like meritocracy, or in Asia, highlight even more that it's a Western concept. And at this point, D&I professionals are really burnt out. We all know this, being asked to do more with less, being asked to push the business, its employee networks, and its leaders to continue thinking about inclusion without the actual backing, financially, mentally, and emotionally. Even before the backlash, D&I professionals have needed to do the hard work for a while in addition fighting for it. And now it has just intensified, and we're looking behind our backs. One after another, D&I roles are being made redundant or absorbed into broader roles. What's been interesting, though, was the pushback against the backlash. In markets like China, for example, who would go the other way when the US goes another, emergence of more focus on gender equality started. Hong Kong started requiring stock exchange listed companies to have DEI policies. Several markets continue to have, and some strengthened their disability quotas. Different markets reacted in their own different ways. And in addition to leveraging continued local compliance, Asia is adapting by using its culture as an anchor, as a highly collective rather than individualistic market. Concepts like harmony, respect, and belonging have their own local translations that are already ingrained into our core. Krengjay in Thai, or avoiding burden, discomfort to others. Pakikisama in Filipino as a core value that translates getting along with others. Both concepts naturally fostering a deep sense of belonging. And finally, now we not only talk about the business case but the economic case. In Southeast Asia alone, LGBTQ plus discrimination is estimated to be reducing regional GDP by up to 1.47%, but that's equivalent to 33 billion US dollars. In Open for Business, we're bringing these numbers to the table and help governments and institutions understand that DEI is not anymore just a moral imperative, but a tool for revenue generation.
That's really powerful, and especially when you put in the economics behind it, Jays. I mean, it just sets, and anyone who's worked with leadership where they ask you for the ROI on DEI or the case for DEI, I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about here. Lungi, I'll ask you if you could also elaborate on the same questions, like what have you noticed, and especially from the context of where you work, because I think you work in a really unique space with a really interesting intersectional focus.
Yes. No, thank you, Sophie. In fact, when Ajaz was talking, I could sort of pinpoint, the patterns that we experience within the Southern Africa, specifically around the fact that the backlash is not loud, it's not explicit, but we find that it's very, very subtle. It's implicit in the way that we find it and how it sort of finds its way into our workplaces and our spaces. And I think the reason for that is because South Africa is quite unique in the sense that when we speak of DEI, we also have to speak about transformation, and we are unable to sort of divorce ourselves from transformation. And so these legislations are there, they're strong, but unfortunately the experiences on the ground do not sort of align to these very, very strong constitutional legislative frameworks. And so that is why then that the backlash cannot be that loud, because they already have the backing of legislation. And so it becomes quite tough for us then to sort of then bring the evidence that we are not getting that support. But just like what we've heard with Asia, some of the examples is the cutting of budgets and resources, and DEI practitioners having to constantly speak of the value of their work. That also is, I would say, sort of the backlash that we're experiencing within the space. And I also think it has to do with the expertise. I think sometimes within the country and some organizations, even the creating of inclusive spaces, DI having expertise, we always assume that anyone can do the work. But I think it's important that we respect the work. DI are experts in the field, because we are looking at designing and implementing and evaluating these DI initiatives. So it has to be people that are passionate, people that know their work, so that we can actually then translate legislation to the workplace experiences. Yeah.
And I think that's it's such a sensitive point as well, because what you're referring to sometimes becomes that very sensitive topic of whether you need to have the lived experience in order to be the expert on the subject, which I know a lot of people fight very significantly against it. And yet I think there is some value in that, because sometimes no matter how much I can talk to you about this, if you haven't lived it, there is a lacking in your experience of it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's really fascinating, Lungi. I think it leads us really well into the third question, which is around resilience and adaptation. So what are the practical frameworks for sustaining DEI work within hostile or resistant institutional environments, and what lessons can we learn from these front lines? For this one, I will actually go back to you, Jays, because I know that you had some preference around how you wanted to address that question. So could you give me an answer and maybe then hand it over to V, because V as well is going to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Sustaining this work, especially in resistant corporate environments, require pivoting from top-down advocacy to bottom-up community architecture. In my work in Radius Networks, we've seen the strengthening and emergence of employee resource groups or volunteer networks within companies advancing a particular community or cause. I've been leading ERG summits left and right in the last year because while these executive orders can mandate changes to programs and policies, ERGs are seen as engaged employees working on talent strategies like employee retention, even market expansion. So they can't be touched just like that. Inter-industry networks also continue to thrive. Our coalition partners in Open for Business are collectively fighting for LGBTQ plus inclusion across the world under this umbrella. Disability and Pride inter-industry networks in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in Singapore are doing career fairs, business forums, inclusion playbooks to continue on this work. At the moment, I'm architecting the Cultural Infusion Global Community Asia chapter, which will be backed by our People and Culture Index across member organizations, because we don't just want to measure D&I programs, we want to measure the impact of it on the ground. How is your identity actually affecting your career progression and your experience in the workplace? So much is happening in both small and big ways, and all powered by inter-industry and coalition resilience.
That's fascinating. I mean, again, so much that each one of these questions should have been a session on its own, because I think there's so much that we can go into. But with what you've said, V, I'll move it back to you. What do you have to say around this? Like, what are the lessons that you have learned or that you have observed us learning over the last period of time?
Thank you so much. I'm glad Jace talked about the frameworks in terms of in the companies. Whatever she touched on, it's what we experience as well in South Africa.
There's a bit of background noise there that I can hear.
I don't think it's coming from me. I think there's someone talking.
It was someone else. I muted them. Go ahead, V. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much. So Jace has touched on what companies are doing. I think it's the same as what we are doing in South Africa. And I just want to touch on what Lungile talked about in terms of in South Africa, when we talk about these issues, when we talk about DEI, we also talk about transformation. And we talk about transformation because of where we are coming from apartheid, trying to build ourselves and trying to build our company. And it means that when you in the US and other countries in Europe have got different pain points, we've got very different pain points from you. So we've got the race pain points, we've got the gender pain points, and we've got other pain points that we're trying to fix, that our DEI strategies are a little bit different, but companies are also struggling to do that. So as a country, maybe let me talk about as a country in terms of South Africa, we are definitely resilient. We are adaptable. And I think we are fighting very hard to really win in this war. And what gave me comfort was that we took on the giant, and I think we've won. I don't think we've won yet, but I think history is going to judge us fairly. Because, and if you can look at our country, you'll realize that with all these levels that we had and the different privileges, the resources that came with the levels, it also created gaps amongst the different races. So we were trying to narrow the gap, and the funding was helping narrow the gap. And now with this DEI backlash, it means the gaps are even going bigger. We're we're trying to narrow them, but they're getting bigger. So one example that I can make is to, Trump, I'm hoping we can say that when he says there's a genocide of white people in South Africa, if that was the case, I'm sure you were going to see flights coming to the US every day full of people who are running away from the countries. But it's not there, but it creates that distrust amongst us. But I am confident that in the long run, we're going to win this DEI backlash, and as a country also we're going to win because we are resilient. So somehow I'm happy that it happened now at this moment, because what it did, it made us look for solutions for ourselves, look for solutions for our country, whereas we were dependent on the big brother to give us solutions, to provide the money, to do something for us. But when it came, we started to say, what can we do ourselves? What is it that we can really do today to make sure that we survive today and tomorrow and the future? And that was a good thing. And I'm sure from those who are coming with the backlash, they're thinking they are hating us, the country, the people. But I think in the long run, we're going to win because we're going to sit down and we're going to find solutions for ourselves. So for me, I felt like we were in the comfort zone and we were disturbed from the comfort zone, and now we're trying to think, what is it that we can do? How can we fight? And I'm confident that South Africans, let me not talk for other countries because I don't know, South Africans are very resilient. We're going to fight and we're going to win. Maybe not today, but soon. I think we're going to win because we are already out of our comfort zone and we're trying to find solutions for us that are going to last us for a lifetime. Thank you, Sophie.
Thanks, V. A few things. We've lasted 40 minutes without mentioning his name. So, there's one. But number two, it was such a hopeful thing that you've mentioned. I think each country has its own challenges and we all have our own. I don't think anybody is not resilient. I think each country has its own flavor of resilience and how they do it and how they survive. And with some, it's louder than others, and with some, it's more colorful than others. But you've just given me the perfect segue for our last question, which we're going to ask of all of the panelists. What does the future of DEI look like from your vantage point? And that could be from the region that you are in, it could be from the sector that you're in, the discipline that you work in. And what are the emerging opportunities and threats? I think you've highlighted that really well, and it gives us a space for all of the other speakers to also give us their points of view. So if I could ask all of my other speakers to please chip in here. Whoever is motivated most to go first, you're free to go.
I'm happy to go first. So, for me, the future of D&I is really intersectional, and best case scenario, what we have always been hoping for anyway, embedded into all business processes, with DEI roles being incorporated into engagement, talent, culture, for some even within the business itself. Like I said, my last role in IBM was business development executive, leveraging inclusion as a foot on the door to acquire new clients or grow the business. I think we will see more of that as a way of fighting whatever is happening. There will continue to be external political and social threats, but the biggest threat is actually internal, because what I see as the biggest problem is inclusion fatigue. This is why we need to continue standing together as we're doing so here in SGP. Tomorrow, I might get tired, but knowing that I have everyone else in the room continuing the fight will encourage me to just rest, recharge, and fight again. And the need for communities is at its peak, and together, enabling the economic case is our biggest weapon. So all these are my areas of expertise. So let's continue the conversation beyond this point in the breakouts. Let's connect here on LinkedIn. I shared my information on the chat and all other avenues to continue fighting alongside each other.
Thank you so much, Jace. Lungi, if I can ask you to go next, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I think for me, when I was, sort of thinking about the question, I also wanted to challenge myself a little bit to say, if we're thinking about the future of DEI, we also need to think about the future of work. And so with the changing nature of work, with the introduction of AI, with the hybrid work, the automation, well-being, and many other topics, I think it's also important that we understanding that our DEI efforts need to sort of not to outpace the changing nature of work. And I think that's quite a crucial thing for us as a country, because the way that work is changing, the evolution is quite fast paced. And so if we lag along, then the question of our work being credible, then it comes to the fore. So I think, as we are thinking about where to from here, the future, I think we also need to think about how, our work is changing, and how then can we make sure that our initiatives are also suit for the changing world of work. Yeah. Thanks, Sophie.
100%, and spoken with such a HR lens. It's amazing. Thank you, Lungi. And Sumaya, we started with you. I'll end with you as well. If you could please give us your point of view around the future.
Yes, thank you. So for me, the future of DEI has to, we focused a lot on representation, and it matters, on language, and it matters, on visibility, and all of it matters. But for me now, we need to shift to go to power, like redesigning redistribution of power, redistribution of authority, redistribution of legitimacy, and questioning the root, because we've been also very distracted on the vision, like the image that we do not belong to. But what's been happening is through representation, we've been conforming to whiteness and playing a role and masking, and actually finding ourselves in very harmful places, trying to act as the structure that was actually harming us, and we become also perpetrators of that harm as we engage in that system. So I want to question even the ways of working, the ways we are building organizations, the ways we are structuring governance and decision-making powers, because the way we are doing it is harmful inherently, and we are trying to fit in and conform. And when we talk about diversity, it's not just diversity of race and class and gender and so on. It's also diversity of existence, of ways of being in those spaces. And there was a quotation that I used a lot in my DEI work, that I still use. It's, we are building capacity for non-conformity. We are building capacity for non-conformity. We are building organizations that allow and bring more like biodiversity in the soil of the organization, when we think of it as biomimicry, right? We're building something that hasn't been done before, so it's very uncomfortable. And the other piece also that's missing for me in DEI work is we are not allowing enough space for feelings. And I'm thinking of the grief, because as we are losing the old and it's collapsing, we are also feeling the grief of the people dying, of the mass extinction, the grief of the structures that we do not belong to, the grief of all the expectations that we had on our organizations that they are not even able to fulfill it. Like, they're promising well-being and belonging, and we keep working on convincing them that we deserve, to be seen in those spaces, and it's exhausting. And the levels of burnout for the DEI practitioner is just so high, because it's exhausting to try to convince people that the lives of our people is worthy to be just worthy. We're worthy of existence, and just inherently worthy. We're not supposed to prove anything to be just considered as like we matter in those spaces. And I think we're expecting this acknowledgement from people who cannot give it because they have no idea. And I'm on an individual level, I am done trying to convince and teach those people how we function. So there is like also a decentering of whiteness. This decentering of whiteness is the structures we are building. Who are they made for? Who designed the room? Who is actually in strategy? Who is present in the room versus who is actually designing the room and asking other people to adapt and conform and comply? And the questioning of all of that is like a dismantlement and this deconstruction that actually creates a void. And the void is frightening, so we keep going back to structures, to playing the game that is harmful for our people.
It's a defense mechanism. It's for safety.
Yeah, it is for safety because also we are in survival mode as we exist in those spaces, as we are defending our people and so on. So from survival mode to thriving, like if we are creating spaces for our bodies to actually exhale, like, oh my God, I can not only I feel safe, but I can create something new from that space. We can only do it together, and we can only do it by centering the people who actually should have this design power, who are offering different ways of working, different ways of interacting with nature, different ways of interacting with the land, different languages, and different connection to time, like from linear time to more circular time that we have. Like in Africa, we function on circular time in many spaces still, many countries all over the continent. And just the connection to time is also colonized by white supremacy. And I'm going to stop here.
No, and look, I remember last year I came across a term that I started using when people questioned me about my levels of resilience. I was like, work genocide balance should not be a term. You know, I should not work on how I can manage the onslaught of news of a genocide while still maintaining my 9 to 5 and still smiling at coffee meetups and Zoom calls. So,
yeah, and responding to KPIs, you know, it's like,
exactly. I'm
we're
talking about
counting
our
the dead,
belonging.
and then, did you reach the objectives? How are the numbers doing?
And I know we're over time, but even that sense of what does belonging look like? Because belonging is not an individualistic, centralized thing. You know, if somebody dies in Palestine, or even in Sudan, or even in Congo, and my grief shouldn't be because that person is personally connected to me. I could still feel that grief despite not being necessarily in direct contact with that person. So I think that's anyway, as I said, we can go on for ages. Thank you so much, Sumaya, and thanks to all of the panelists. I know we've gone over with our time, and we've eaten a little bit of our time for Q&A. So Bren, you keep me honest. Where are we in time in terms of how to move forward? Do we just step into the breakouts now, or do you want us to still have some space for Q&A?
Maybe we are a bit over time, but maybe we can do one or two like burning questions that folks have.
Okay.
But I think a lot of that can definitely come out in the breakouts. Technically,
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, if somebody has put in a question in the chat, if you want to ask, one of us will be in the breakout, so you feel free to ask in the breakout session, unless there's a question that you absolutely have to present right now. No, happy to go to breakouts.
Yeah, and I put the breakout rooms. We're gonna have folks choose breakout rooms, so I put those in the chat, so if you can read them out. And then I also shared who's going to be in each one, because we do have the speakers will be facilitating, and then we'll have some SGP folks too.
We do have a hand up, Diana.
Yeah.
If you want to take yourself off mute.
I am. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good morning from Washington, D.C., which is the most non-political town in the world. So
I heard you have a pool.
We have a green pool. But I wanted to find out, because this has been on my mind for a while as a DEI, a cesspool. Exactly. Syra, thank you. And what I wanted to ask, because it's been on my mind as a DEI practitioner for more than a decade, I wanted the panel to talk about, just briefly before the breakout, about rebranding, because there are a lot of organizations that have had to rebrand because of the mandate against DEI. And so what I'm concerned with is that how do we make sure that the rebranding does not equal to elimination of? Because there are organizations that in their rebranding are making it an excuse to say, well, okay, well, let's put that on the back burner. We're already rebranding to people and culture department. As opposed to the department or the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. So what is the reaction, or what do the speakers or anyone can contribute to that.
Diana, your question has touched a very sore point for me.
I'm sorry.
Painful. No, you're absolutely fine. It's a very painful one because I think last year specifically, and if I may, before any of the speakers jump in, I noticed myself and Brennan, I have had conversations on this. Even the term DEI dropped off a cliff on LinkedIn and on publications, and I could see just people not using the term itself within a span of months, like 2 months, 3 months in, literally Q1, Q2. We stopped saying the word and teams rebranded. So it was such a painful moment in my career. But Sumaya, I can see you're volunteering to go forward. So please go ahead. I'm sure you'll be a lot more eloquent than me in answering this.
I don't know about that, but thank you very much. I wanted to answer because we've been working on this so hard this past 3 years at Next Evolution. I had a team of 4 people, and we had clients working actively on DEI and decoloniality in organizations, and it was thriving for a while. And we actually felt the crisis of the defunding of NGOs and nonprofits all over the globe. And the past year actually has been the hardest. And the company, I built it first time in 2021. So we have like direct financial impact, and we've been thinking of the wording and how we carry ourselves and how we carry the work. And I am one of the people who actually removed the word DEI from my language publicly, not for a rebrand or to influence necessarily, but because I think it was also lacking some things that was also carried by the work that's not actually part of DEI right now. I felt like it was an opportunity to widen the work. And I was talking to I'm in Algeria, and trans people, like the trans community here is very much underground. And one of the organizations we were just talking, they were like, actually the labeling itself of trans puts them in danger. We're actually historically and from millennia, actually, in these societies, there were trans people who were completely integrated and had like a social role, but the branding of it, the conceptualizing and the language around it puts them actually at risk because it is completely merged in a universalist language that comes from the US that's actually putting them in danger. So there's this whole conversation that I found very interesting. So my conclusion is there are 2 levels to this conversation. There is a very the activist language where we need to be very radical, uncompromising, and direct. So if you are an activist, you have to carry like the push, like we are here to shock the system by like deep radical language that dismantles the structure in place. But when you are in corporate, you have to negotiate with the structure you are contracting with. So the question is, where is the organization at, and the assessing of where are the people at when you talk to them, and from that you adapt the language to them. So that's why that's exhausting, and you are more facing actually more burnout because there is so much adapting to do that. But strategically, it's what works best because you start where they are. So even if they're white supremacist, bullies, if you are working in that organization, you will have to adapt. And it's exhausting. So whether you want to do the work or not, it's actually, there is a whole space for negotiating with. So what we do with our clients is like the assessment phase, where they are, the language they use, is all included in the assessment. And from that, we build the program to evolve from that space without trying to project onto them our activist language and try to cancel them or shame them because they don't use it or they don't know about it. So there is a whole work to be done. So whether you're in the corporate system negotiating with the system, there's a whole more adaptation. And I think we need to adapt to where the trends are going, even though it's a novlang and there is power over in that space. So it's just personal choice and your positionality also in the ecosystem you're acting from or in.
Thank you so much, Sumaya. And I see Jays as well has put in some her answer there in the chat. So Diane, if you want to have a look at that as well. Again, in the interest of time, and I'm just conscious we might have to reduce the breakout sessions just a little bit, just to allow for us all to have space to talk and then to come back again and just share again before we close the session. So as you could see in the chat, we have 3 breakout rooms: building coalitions, evidence, narrative and persuasion, and reimagining DEI for the next decade. We are going to break you into the 3 rooms. One of the panelists is going to be, at least one of the panelists will be in each one of these rooms as well. So we can reflect on what we've shared so far. We can talk about what we wanted to, what we want people to take out of this, or what our approaches are, or whatever the burning question may have been that you didn't get answered. So, Bren, am I okay? Are we good to go?
Yes, good to go. Emma is going to open up the breakout rooms. And so you should see either a prompt on your screen or, are you seeing it? Okay.
Everyone can choose their own breakout room. So you have to go to, there should be like a button at the bottom of your screen where you can go and select the breakout room that you'd like to join.
Great.
Okay, and we'll see you. I know we said 15. Will we keep it down to 10 just to allow for space?
Yeah, let's do 10.
Yeah, okay, well, let's do 10 and we'll see you all in 10 minutes.
Great.
Then should I stop recording or?
Yeah, you can stop recording. It will follow you, but you'll want to restart once we come back.
Okay, sure.
Excellent question. Thank you.
I'm just waiting for folks.
Thank you.
Folks will keep filtering back in. We still have, I just realized after I said that part too, we have 15, 14. So,
with people still coming in.
I also got to say, this is some of the best breakout room transition. Often people will leave because I don't know, they're busy, they don't want to talk, whatever, but very impressive. Like, we have so many people who want to really be engaged in this conversation. So
I think the topic is so like hot, for the lack of a better word, and people want to talk about it. So I think we're touching the emotions of a lot of people, and that's why they're all still being engaged. And I really appreciate everyone staying as well. So that further ado, we had 3 breakout rooms. I could call out breakout rooms, or I could ask whoever wants to go first and tell us in a few words how your breakout room session went, or what were the main takeaways from your discussion was. So whoever wants, if anyone is brave enough to go first, by all means do, but otherwise I'm more than happy to call out.
Okay, I can start sharing from the first room, and please do feel free to add in case I miss anything.
Which room were you in, Jays?
So breakout room 1 about building coalitions. So we had a few sharings, and the first one being, before we even go into coalitions, we have to first fight within our organizations, where in certain industries like the technology sector, misogyny is still there. And before we even join any external partnerships, we have to fix misogyny inside and allow them to see us and hear us, and that we exist in the first place. And we've also heard about how the elimination of our identities is happening around the world, where CDC has been deleting articles that contain gender and other terminologies that align with DEI. And we were talking about how erasing our identities would actually mean it can't be measured, and it can progress. So you're definitely right, Sophie. I mean, we've touched on feelings and emotions in terms of how this is all affecting us. So yeah, there was some of our insights. Lungi, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, you've captured that perfectly. We also just was talking about just a little bit of the backlash in our spaces, and sort of talking about that the rebrand is great, but it could also be a double-edged sword. And so we need to really just maybe think about it a little bit more and see if it can actually work in our different contexts. Yeah. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Lungi.
Thanks, Jace.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jace. I was in breakout room 2, so who would like to go into what we covered? Because I'm sure people are fed up of listening to me now.
If anyone wants to share, go for it. And if people really do not want to share, then I can.
That's fine, yeah.
Great. We did not check before we left. Well, please add things on. A couple of things we talked about. It really was our room was around communication, storytelling. And so the conversation that we had right before, the question that was asked, I forgot who asked it. Sorry. Diana, around this rebrand. We sort of took that a little bit. And then Joe asked a really good question about sort of this tension between, people's voices being in the room, but not wanting to, essentially like put that mantle upon people. It's their own decision. So we talked a bit about that, allyship there, rebranding. We talked about more. There was a really good quote. Oh, I should have. Language is alive. So like, how can we work within that? It's changing. We can change it. We can be part of that change. And then Sophie, I loved your quote around the fight has changed. Someone's taken our weapon of choice. And so we just need to learn a new weapon and we will have to keep learning new weapons. I hate the violent, imagery, but
yeah,
but it really is like it is a fight for literally our lives. And so when we communicate, be that changing language or whatever, that's really how we are going to be successful. Joe, thank you. Please add/correct.
Add, not correct. Something when I was sharing my the resistance sometimes of other marginalized people that I'm working with, and in this case, it's Indigenous people who are like, I'm fed up of DEI. I'm just fed up of all of these words. Just like, never mind, because no one is still listening to me. So why bother? And one of the things, Bren, that you said that I've been like marinating on, I've been sitting with is when you talked about values and shared values and about like, how do we identify the shared values that groups that potentially oppose each other still carry, regardless of the larger opposition. And I think this is something I'm just going to sit on a little while. I think partly because, yes, I see that and I need to think about that a little bit more. But my first reaction is that the value systems are so completely different that we're talking to, And so, you also mentioned, or someone had mentioned, like why does one have to fight and say I am a human being? And I'm like, yeah, so I just want to highlight that because I think these are even if I don't have an answer, the points being raised and the questions being asked are incredibly insightful and important to this like overall conversation. So just wanted to say, Bren, thanks for the insights that you shared, because it's gotten me to think even more. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe. And I think that's the value of what we do here in SGP. I think it's we allow the space for people who have this mentality and have these ideas and thoughts to connect with each other and to talk to each other and to, I can speak for myself. There aren't a lot of people who in my day-to-day interactions that I could have these conversations with. A lot of people don't work in the space. They don't understand it. So I think that is, if nothing else, this is one of the values that we bring forward, that you have the space to actually have deep, insightful conversations with everybody else, which was exactly what you've brought up, Joe. Room 3.
Yeah, I can go ahead and unless Amira, Anna, or anyone from the room would like to say anything, or V.
Please go ahead.
All right. So the conversation revolved around how to imagine new futures from systems that are harmful and so on. Like the idea of imagining. We mentioned Afrofuturism and how to imagine from a space where harm was never committed, instead versus imagining from the system broken still. And another part of the conversation was Trump versus a wider systemic issue. Are we concentrating the debate, and individualizing it, or are we addressing the wider system? And what does that look like? And there was also the conversation that I saw between like past and future. Do we go back and repair what was done and like structures from before, or do we imagine from scratch, and what does that look like? And we didn't get to end the conversation, but what I found interesting and few questions that stayed open, it was, what does building capacity for nonconformity really look like practically? We didn't get to answer that, but that was asked by Anna. And Bora, if you'd like to add anything, because you were speaking when it interrupted, and just complement that, you can feel free, please, to do it now.
Thank you, Sumaya. I work in environmental and climate nonprofit, and my work had been focusing on bringing narratives related to equity more forward in our campaigns and the issues that we work on. Suffice to say, it's been really tough in the past year and a half. A lot of the work has kind of gone underground, and to the rebranding point, it's like, what are the frames that will work depending on audiences? And some of the work that we're taking like some tactics from like what the right wing uses, which is like, if you go on Instagram, say, and you're scrolling, and you might see content from somebody say like your favorite actor or something like that. But it's not from the actor's feed. It's actually coming from somebody else. So it's like a third party validator. And this is what the right wing does, is like they flood the zone with clips that can kind of go viral at any moment that's not actually tied to the account of the person that you might be interested in. So it's like, using similar tactics, but you need money for that, right? Like, so like get your funds, get your, do whatever you have to do to get more money to like shift the narrative. And to like, and I think Gen Z is probably ahead of this game of like figuring out how to like go viral and whatever. Like, so I think there's value in, doing what the enemy is doing, and using tactics that drive toward toward the goal you want to reach, which is, humanity for everyone. And yeah, like, and it's been a real, yeah, it's like, if anything else, like we're trying to see what the gaps are now, right? Like that's the opportunity that this moment gives us, is like, where are the holes, and how do we bridge that so that we can come out stronger, and like, and yeah, like, and also knowing that, this job isn't mine to finish, right? Like we all carry this burden together. Just trying to remind myself of that when it gets like super hard.
Thank you, Bora. V, I'll give you a minute before we close if you want to add on to that.
Thank you, Sophie. I saw a chat from Amira, and I was excited because she touched on something that we didn't touch on, which is intersectionality. To say this backlash, it may come from one individual, it may come from one country, but it's affecting us differently. And we haven't even taken the opportunity to say, let us sit down and see how this affects the different individuals, the indigenous people, in the different regions, because if we don't think about that, we're also going to do harm in the future, because we're going to come up with solutions that we think should fit everybody without necessarily looking at the regional nuances and the individual. Like myself, when I was talking about my country, to say, if you know the history of South Africa and apartheid, you'll know that we had different layers. So a white woman and an African woman have got different backgrounds, different experiences, and different And this backlash affects us differently because one is at the bottom and one is at the top, and the privileges and the resources are all different. So Amira, thank you so much for bringing the intersectionality to the debate. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thanks.
Thank you so much, V. Just on the last few seconds that I have, I've written down building capacity for nonconformity because I'm going to put it on a t-shirt and get stickers and this is going to be my thing going forward. Thank you to everybody. I think the conversation could have gone on for another 2 hours. There was a suggestion there about a part 2. More than happy to do a part 2. Give us your ideas. Keep in touch. All the LinkedIns, reach out to each other. Please, one of the tools, one of the weapons we're going to have is to keep leaning on each other and connecting with each other and to stop the infighting and the net picking that happens sometimes in the space. We're all in it together. We're all in it for the greater good. So please keep in touch, connect with each other, connect with SGP, stay in touch with us as well, with the speakers. Thank you so much to everybody who stayed with us. I know it was a long session and we went over time, but again, to the panelists, big round of applause from me and everybody in the audience. And I'll hand it back to you, Bren.
Thanks so much. We put links in the chat. Please find us, follow us, join us. And if you have capacity to host either a follow-up conversation or co-host with us, follow-up conversation and or a sort of community of practice, an SGP circle around DEI, I think that would be kick-ass. I just cannot facilitate another one. So let us know. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic morning, evening, afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you and bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
This is great.
Thanks a lot. Take care.